We're live. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this Thursday evening. Last month we had planned in December to hold this event. Unfortunately, we had to postpone due to some severe weather, frigid weather, I might add, that eventually kind of postponed choir events, and then ultimately we had to move this because we did have a number of parents who wanted to attend their individual child's concert and or band performance. But once again, thank you for coming out. My name is William Short. I am the superintendent of the Gateway School District. I was appointed superintendent in July of this year. However, I was acting superintendent, I believe, back in March or April from the Gateway School Board. And we do have a number of school board members here, and I want to thank them for attending as well. Once again, thank you for braving the elements. As I was driving in tonight, it was a downpour, it was a monsoon, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I hope just everyone comes out tonight. Because truly, this is why we're here. We're here for academics. We're not here to reflect upon what happened at this high school, and I'm not even going to talk about it because it's done with, it's over with, it's been dealt with, and I can assure everyone in this room that that incident has been dealt with, and it's not a reflection of the students, the staff, and everyone here at Gateway High School. So with that, our main purpose is to educate children, and one of the things that I felt was very important as we move forward over the next several years is being very transparent with everything that we were doing academically over the last couple years, recognizing our strengths, weaknesses, but also understanding that there is a system in place. And that system, standards-aligned system that you will hear more about as we move through the presentation tonight, really is a framework developed by the Pennsylvania Department of Education that schools should be following in order to advance not only achievement and growth. And you'll hear those two words tonight, because as we look at the report card of our district, you will oftentimes hear me refer to achievement and growth. And with those two words, when I say achievement, think about that individual moment in time when you're throwing a dart and that child, your child, is taking that test. And when I say that test, I think we know what test that is, the PSSA and or the Keystone, which is how we are judged in Pennsylvania as a school. And I do apologize, you'll be hearing me cough throughout this presentation. Working on a cold, but thank you for the cough drops, they really helped. But achievement is either broken down by proficient and advanced. When I say proficient, that means a child has passed the state assessment, or basic or below basic, which means a child has not passed the PSSA and or Keystone. When I say growth, I'll refer to PVAS, Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. And PVAS is a calculation used as children enter the 4th grade, and they have 1 year's worth of data from assessments in 3rd grade. And the state, through PVAS, will give that child at the beginning of 4th grade a targeted data point, meaning they're estimating where that child should be at the end of the 4th grade year after they take the assessment. So they're projecting where that child should be. So if a child comes in at the beginning of 4th grade, having been advanced in 3rd grade, In all likelihood, PVOS would estimate that that child's going to be advanced in 4th grade. However, you still have to be able to grow that child in that band of 4th grade, meaning advanced, still advanced, but you see how the child moved up in the scale. So think about those two things as we move through this presentation. This is an interactive presentation. Some of the information, maybe the first time, parents, school board members, I know our administrative team have seen this before, but if you do have a question or are confused, please do not hesitate to raise your hand. I'll try to elaborate. We do have a number of our administrators here that can also be available to chime in to assist as well. So, thank you. Heiko? Report cards aren't just for kids anymore. When you look around the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the first icon or box, the Pennsylvania School Performance Profile, was created and established 3 years ago. It replaced what I think everyone was familiar with, the No Child Left Behind law. Have we heard that? No Child Left Behind has been left behind at this point. We are now moving into the era of Every Student Succeeds Act. Okay? ESSA, they refer to. And with ESSA, President Obama at the time had funding for states that would adopt the Common Core. And we've heard those words, right? Common Core. Sometimes parents, administrators, when we looked at that Common Core, we kind of recognized that it was a shift in teaching and learning for our children. I myself have 3 girls who have been through 3 different educational, if you want to say, systems developed by the state and supported by the feds. My oldest daughter graduating from the University of Pittsburgh in a biology degree, a math wizard. High school daughter, sophomore, going to be a junior, more or less the social studies person. My youngest daughter in 4th grade, learning math right now, bringing home math assignments that I'm looking at that my 2 oldest daughters had in 6th and 7th grade. And we all know what we're talking about, correct, as we shake our heads. So yes, when we say more rigor, absolutely, and that's what the Common Core was for. We want to raise the bar for our students to get them college and career ready. And that's another buzzword, college and career ready. Western Pennsylvania schools. Every April, the Pittsburgh Business Times releases, it's a magazine, not only locally in Pittsburgh, but throughout the other regions of Pennsylvania, rankings of school districts broken out by schools, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. It's a comparison look of apples versus apples, high schools versus high schools, middle schools versus middle schools. And it's based off of 3 years worth of data, rounded in every year into their formula, which then they put a ranking on. Those in the education field and parents should be very familiar with the Pittsburgh Business Times. When it is released in April, guaranteed you will see articles in the Post-Gazette, articles in the Trib. We will post information on our website validating our work we have done inside our buildings with our staff, and I can't say enough about our staff, and I will have more to say about them in a few moments, with the work that they've done to ensure that we are ranked among the top school districts and schools in Western Pennsylvania. And that has been reflected for years. Also, let's not forget about those annual tests that occur at the high school level. Those of us can remember them: the SAT, AP, Advanced Placement, the ACT test. Now, at Gateway and in this area, you will not see many students take the ACT based on the colleges that our students apply to. It's just a geographical trend. And looking at the data that we will see here soon, you'll see that we've only had 66 students take the ACT. So that's something that is trending a little bit. More and more students are beginning to take that, but heavily we rely upon the SAT. Also, something that is very unique and needs to be mentioned here and fully supported by our school board. Every 10th grader at Gateway High School takes the PSAT. It's funded by the school district. So we offer our students that opportunity to take the preliminary SAT that's used for national merit status to eventually take the SAT in order to give them that determination and boost to show them that yes, you can achieve that goal of going to a college or university. So that is something unique that happens in Gateway. We offer the PSAT, and I believe, do you have the date on that by chance? I think it's usually done in the fall. But we do offer it. We test the kids here, not only in this LGI, but also in the cafeteria, and scores are then released to the parents. Next slide, please. When we talk about the school report cards, Pennsylvania has adopted a website, and I encourage everyone to get on the site because it is the end-all for grading and reporting of schools based off of the standardized test because it's heavily weighted. The school performance profile, PA school performance profile, I believe it's .org. You can Google it. It'll take you right to it. You have the availability to log in as parent, teacher, educator, administrator. They track the number of usages on the interactive site. Once you go on there, and I'll navigate you through this site in a few minutes, you will be able to see a complete profile of Gateway school districts, 7 schools, individually how they performed, areas of strengths and weaknesses, and also facts pertaining to each and every school. If you notice, I gave a quick overview of what the PA or the SPP stands for. Notice the 3 purposes. Especially item number 3. Pennsylvania schools can set goals to improve achievement and growth based off of the report card that is issued by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Next slide. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but if you could take a couple of minutes and read that to yourself, please. In summary, in 2015, the state was prepared to issue a score, and it's a calculated score based off of a typical grading scale, 90 to 100 an A, 80 to 89 a B, etc. for every school in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, including charter schools. However, when the test results came in, because this was a shift to a new assessment, the PA Core assessment, meaning it was a different test for the first time in Pennsylvania, aligned to the Common Core PA Core. Notice the federally approved pause was put in place to mitigate the unintended impacts. Let me explain what the unintended impacts were. I will show you later on a PDE release timeline that gave school districts 5 years to prepare for the PA Core, meaning revised curriculum, enhance your resources to prepare your children for the more rigorous PA Core test. Guess what didn't happen? School districts fell behind. They were basically saying, this is going to go away. We're not going to adopt PA Core. It's not going to happen. Well, guess what? It happened. So imagine our children, and I'm not just saying Gateway, a number of school districts, who went into that testing center, basically the classroom cafeteria, and our kids are being assessed in grade 3 mathematics on content that was never delivered to them from a teacher. What do you think the outcome would be? I can remember getting calls from teachers saying, we never taught this. Where did this come from? Scores across the Commonwealth bombed. Basically what they're saying, they were embarrassed to publicize the scores. That's how low they were. We had work to do. 2 years ago, this administrative team, teachers right here, got together. We did something pretty much unheard of. We tackled 3 curriculum areas, rewrites, purchasing new materials and resources in ELA, reading, mathematics, and social studies in 1 year because we weren't aligned. I credit those staff members, and they're sitting right here, for the work that they did, because we were pulling them out of the classroom. They were committed. They did the work. They recognized when they looked at standards and anchors from the PA Core and what we were teaching, it didn't align, didn't match. They sat through presentations from book companies to ensure that we had the proper resources. And we prepared ourselves for the 2015-16 school year, which was last year. That effort was monumental. A lot of work. On top of that, I'm going to say a word here. Keep your pencils in your hands. Don't throw it at me. IPASS. Oh. How many people remember that IPASS system? IPASS is a student management software system, okay? We had ProSoft. ProSoft was getting out of the business. I'm not going to get into the decision-making process. It was determined we were going to jump on board with iPass. And we decided to make that leap in July, with school starting in August. iPass was a student management system from Massachusetts, not in Pennsylvania. Micah, you remember that, right? Micah was a young man 2 years ago. He is now 52 years old. He may look young, but there were a lot of issues, a lot of phone calls. I know everyone's shaking their head. And guess what? We did away with iPass after 1 year. And I know parents, they didn't want to hear it, but we had to do it. It wasn't working. So we went from ProSoft to iPass. We got a committee together, teachers, parents, administrators, went out, searched Pennsylvania, found what was working. Now we have Skyward. Seems as if everyone is pleased with Skyward. Is that correct? Here, there. Still got a few bugs to work out. However, compared with what we had, far superior. So throw in all those curriculum areas. And on top of that, teachers coming back, where the professional development should have been around learning those new series. And by the way, teachers, here's Skyward for you. But you know what? They didn't say a word. They went to work, did it, learned it. And the results from that you're going to see whenever I show you the scores, the report card from their efforts last year. Next slide, Micah. Just a synopsis of how the school performance profile is calculated. Notice the two words that I said at the beginning of the presentation: achievement and growth. Achievement is when your son or daughter scores advanced, proficient, basic, below basic. That's the achievement piece, how they score. That's 40% of the calculation into a school's grade. The growth piece became what we call the great equalizer. 40%, and that's complete shift from the NCLB era. No Child Left Behind solely relied on achievement for making, you remember those letters? AYP, adequate yearly progress. Now they want educators to ensure, meaning teachers, that they are providing 1 year's worth of growth for every student in their classroom. And remember how I said they're making a projection, the state. So our teachers at the beginning of the year, in April I'll pick on you because I'm sure you're looking at your data right now. There we go. April, even though, what grade? 2. Okay, so we'll just say April teaches 4th grade. She would be able to go in under a PVOS website and look at her roster of 25 kids and be able to see where every child is projected to score at the end of 4th grade on the state assessment test. So she has an idea of where they're projected. With that data, she's able to break down and determine what the individual child needs in order to grow. Some people at the intermediate unit, administrators, would say, wait a second here, I'm the principal at a school that has every kid advanced. How do we grow advanced kids? Statistically, it's the same. Whether or not a child's below basic, proficient, or advanced, you're still able to grow that child based off of that PVOS calculation. So after the assessment is done in April and or May, the most difficult, probably 3 months, my administrator's over there, right? I get emails, hey Bill, when's the results coming in? Usually, Rocco, end of July, roughly. We get this report, this matrix, and it's just layers of data, but there's a little column of the score and then a little initial like an A for advanced, P for proficient, and then we got to break down that data real quick to see where we're at. From there, we're able to calculate roughly where our school performance profile grade will be. Notice where it says other academic indicators. Attendance, they look at. They could look at test participation. You get those emails, those reminders from the principals. Please ensure that your child gets a good night's sleep. Bring them into school ready to go, because that's part of the equation. Next slide. Let's take a look. Oh, question, go ahead. Yes, if they are a gateway student, and we'll just say in an alternative educational setting or an approved private, yes, absolutely. So tests are then delivered to the high school, wherever that principal may be at that approved school, we deliver the assessments. No. Gateway school, yes. If they're registered with us through PIMS, yes, you got it, yep. Mm-hmm. Yes, now it could be a PASA, meaning a Pennsylvania Alternative Assessment, depending upon the area of development of the child cognitively, or it's the regular PSSA and or Keystone. So the answer is yes. If you look right here, you will see the identified actual scores for each and every building within the Gateway School District. Now, notice the color-coded system at the top. And yes, it's fair to equate this to a letter grade if you choose. The state does not define it by a letter grade. They simply use the percentage. We do have some extra bottles of water if anybody would like one, as I sit up here and chug this trying to lubricate my Adam's apple. But yes, questions? I'm going to answer that. Okay? Very good observation. For the last several, and remember what I said, the PA core, okay? It's a brand new test. We've had it for 2 years. I'll discuss how PVOS, the growth piece, is 40%, played a role in that score, okay? And I'll explain that. Very good observation. April, Jed, quick question. Correct. None of these Kellers would. If you would grow a child more than a year, that would simply count towards one child meeting the expectation of 1 year's worth of growth, which would be added into the calculation. You remember, when you look at one child taking the test, 40% of this score is how the child did on a test. Were they advanced, proficient, basic, or below? The other 40% is, even if that child was advanced, did that child grow? If the child was advanced, all right, and did not grow, they offset each other. Correct. Yes, they would identify that student, even though that student was still advanced, the child did not grow. So it would count against the score. That would keep them basic, which would count against the score. However, if the child grew, it would offset it in a positive direction. You get what I'm saying? Growth, yes. It's not necessarily a year's worth of growth, okay? They will give you a set point, a projected score for, say, your 4th grade child. You got it. Yes. It's only that 40%. So when the score comes out for that child, say it's, give me a score, 1540. And then the child came in at 1560. The child grew. Yes. Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. Yes. I'll show you that on the next slide. You ready? Go back. Click on Gateway High School SPP. Now, this was the site I was telling everyone about, the PA School Performance Profile site. I just automatically hyperlinked it directly to. This is the actual school report card for Gateway High School, okay? I will walk you through this while also attempting to answer April's questions. When you see the indicators of academic achievement, notice they still use the color-coded system. Notice up above. Oops. Technical error. There we go. It was a storm. Who said that? I like that. Notice the PSSA, but it's Keystone at the high school, Algebra 1 test. For an 11th grade cohort, that's how they determine the high school score. So in 2015-16, they cut it off for 11th graders. So all this data reflects the current seniors. Make sense? Because the seniors are all done. They're finished with this. However, all of this data comes from the high school students beginning their Keystone end of the year assessment. It could be in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th, 10th, or 11th. How many of us have had a child in 7th grade algebra? They would take the Keystone algebra in 7th grade. If they pass it, meaning proficient or advanced, it is banked until their end of 11th grade. So they're already in the bank as being passed. Those 7th graders, maybe who did not pass, they will have the opportunity to take the retest in 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade until they pass or don't pass. Make sense? Same thing for ELA literature and biology. Now, biology typically is assessed in 10th grade. English Lit, we are assessing in 10th grade, retesting again in 11th grade. You see, we have 79.12% of our students over the course of either 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th grade have passed the Algebra 1 Keystone. 80% of our kids. Excellent score. You would not be taking any further math Keystone standardized test if you pass in 7th grade. You'd still progress through the curriculum. You get what I'm saying? Algebra 2, geometry, okay? However, there's no end of the year Keystone assessment. There is typically only a handful of students in 7th grade Algebra 1. Cognitively, some kids just aren't prepared. We have honors level kids in 7th grade. How many kids this year? We have 11 kids right now in 7th grade. Okay? So, on average, typically when they hit the high school, the majority of the kids in 9th grade would begin that process of taking the algebra. ELA Lit. One thing you've always heard about Gateway over the years is a very, very strong English department. That's reflected in that score. We prepare our kids very well when they move off to college for their writing and reading experiences. The science and biology. That biology Keystone assessment, when you compare that score of Gateway High School to other districts, we are by far off the charts. Our team of teachers in biology, we're very fortunate that we have Mrs. Rachel Becker, who was actually on one of the teams at PDE when putting together the assessment. Kind of helps. But the instruction is superior. Those categories, and when you see industry standards-based competency assessment, does anybody know what that is? Industry-based competency assessment. When our students elect to go to Forbes Road Vocational School, they're not omitted from this. They have to take a standardized assessment to reflect that they know those 3 areas of science, ELA, and math. So you see our score that's impacted by this. Can we scroll this up a little bit, Micah? Right there. Okay, remember back to the formula. We had indicators of closing the achievement gap, all students, and historically underperforming students. When you see that dark blue arrow, that is superior. And what the state is saying is they're giving you 6 years to decrease those numbers to close the achievement gap. So the state has validated what we have done with closing the achievement gap for historically underperforming students and all students. You remember the other 40% that April brought up about the PVOS? Right here's the calculation. So even though up top with achievement we had, who remembers what the math was? 79% of our kids proficient or advanced. 50% of our kids didn't do what? Grow. April got it. You see what they're doing? So even though 80% of our kids roughly passed the test, the state's saying, even though they were predicted to pass the test, what didn't they do? They didn't grow. So when we analyze this data, we're looking at the instructional pieces, the curriculum, to say, okay, what are we missing here? We're not growing our kids in math, algebra. What do you see with ELA, Lit, and science? We're knocking it out of the ballpark. Yes? Statistical calculation. So you're saying they take it 3rd grade. All right? That's the first year they take it. Yes. So every year, they look at that individual child's performance on standardized tests, and they also roll in other students' scores similar, who then take it the following year, come up with a statistical algorithm that I'm not even sure Mr. Bob Elms could figure out, though he might. Go right ahead. Yes. They don't say 100% of the students. They're saying based off of the calculation, which I can't give you the exact number. They have a band. They will say they will give us that score of 100. Absolutely. Yep. We're growing our kids off the charts. What is the percent? If you click on MICO Mathematics Algebra 1, when they first gave the Keystone Test for the cohort, they then determine, when you look at historically underperforming students, that would be English language learners, special ed students, free and reduced lunch students. They would then take where you're at as a district for the first time they take the test, and then put a cap on where they want you to be at. So it's a floating number for each district. Yes. No, and they give you a 6-year window to close that gap. I do not have that number for what the district should be at in 6 years. But every year they update where you're at. Well, the funding was definitely tied into adopting this PA core through the Race to the Top funds through President Obama. No impact on funding. Close that on, Micah. You see the other indicators? I'm sorry, yes. You good? Let me tell you a very interesting point that was brought up at the intermediate unit that caused a lot of discussion. Imagine this as a parent. First year, say you have a 7th grader that takes the Keystone Algebra in 7th grade. Okay? Scores advanced. Yet they still have to take the 7th grade, what? PSSA math. The first year of the Keystone, Mr. Telly gave me a phone call and said, hey, Bill, I'm analyzing some of our data from the 7th grade Algebra 1 students. Almost every kid scored advanced on the Algebra 1. Rocco, what did you have with the PSSA math? Basic. Yeah. So here we have a child taking an advanced class, typically in high school, okay? Knocking it off the chart, scoring advanced on a Keystone. Yet they still had to take the 7th grade PSSA math. the complexity, the rigor behind it. Remember PA core? Kids were scoring basic. Some kids below basic. So we're down the IU talking to the feds in the state saying something's wrong here. But that's the reality of the rigor of 7th grade, 7th, 8th, and really the whole way down through elementary with the Common Core PA core. And I'll show you that. But I just did want to highlight the scores of Gateway High School. Anytime you see blue or light blue, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Let's click out. We'll go right to Gateway Middle School. Now, one thing I want to highlight here. Take a look at the score. It's really a tremendous score because when you compare, remember what I said, apples to apples? Even though you're seeing a 78.3, which really equates to like a high C, when you compare middle schools, and remember what I said about the rigor of the PA core math ELA, you'll see the type of job Mr. Telly, his teachers did, understanding the difficulty of that test. Click on the SPP. Okay. What's the first thing you see with math? How many kids passed the PSSA math? Where's my pointer? I lost my pointer. Star Kunis, did you take my pointer? All right, the mathematics test. This is a combination 7th and 8th grade. How many students passed? 32%. That's not a bad score. When you compare it apples to apples. What do I mean by that? Middle schools to middle schools. Other 7th grade buildings, 8th grade buildings. That shows you the difficulty of that test and the need for our kids to be better prepared. Are we happy with that score? Absolutely not. 32% of our kids proficient. We've identified that as an area of weakness that we are actually moving on. Mr. Telly, for the last 2 years, has been working with the staff on anchors, standards, remediation. We have a new program in place this year. ELA 66. It's one of the better scores you'll see in middle school, believe it or not. Science. Do we have any science teachers here from Gateway Middle School? Incredible job. I mean that. Scroll down, Micah. Remember what I said about blue. We're growing kids. Even though some of our students did not pass the PSSA 7th and 8th grade math test, we're growing them. Yes. Correct. And what the state maintains, prior to the adoption of the PA core, which was 2 years ago when we had a brand new test, they tell you do not compare scores of previous tests. It's a different test, okay? So we're only analyzing, remember what I said, 2 years? What happened to the first year? Did they give a score? No. You remember how I reviewed that? So this is the first year of a score. They had the individual student scores, they just didn't release a building-wide score. That's what they eliminated. Click back. Correct. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of the elementaries, April. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right up here. You're one step ahead of me. Telepathy. You're going to see it. For time constraints, should I hit UP for that question? Okay. Okay, University Park. As someone maybe said, the flagship of the district, however, not anymore, based off of scores. And I don't mean that negatively. There was always, and I've heard it, University Park, scores are off the charts. I have Dr. Guy Rossi, lives in the community, University Park, assistant superintendent, right? It's a good school. It's a great school. However, I will point out what happened, okay? You remember when I talked about achievement and growth, right? You want to have high achievement, but you also want to have what? Growth. All right, we have our building level score. Whoops. What did I do, Micah? There we go. Okay. Take a look at these three numbers. Math, ELA, and science. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I think we have 1, 2, 3 elementary principals. On the achievement piece, is UP the highest? Mike? Okay, I'm just asking, Mr. Mateo, principal at Evergreen, what was your math? Math at Evergreen was 57. What was math at UP? 67, higher, right? What was ELA at Evergreen? 64. What do we see at UP? 71, higher, right? Science, 88. Science was much higher at Evergreen. However, Evergreen, their staff, because did you see their SPP, what was it? 81? 81.2. Let's scroll down, and we're looking at the growth. Right there. That's 40% of the grade. Remember I went over that? So what's not happening at University Park? Students at University Park are predicted to score proficient or advanced, which is good. It's what you want. they, for the majority, came in at proficient or advanced. However, what did they fail to do? Why did we fail to grow? That's one of those systemic questions that we meet on routinely. Gentlemen, what do you think it is? Not to put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. One of our systemic plans was to invest in what within the classroom? More time. More academic time. And I'm going to review that. Follow me on it. Well, that's the question. And we're going to discuss that, okay? When you're not growing kids, you see the impact of the overall score. If you go to Evergreen, Micah. Scroll down. What do you have here? They're growing kids. So some of the conversations we're having, what are the teachers at Evergreen doing that can assist the teachers at University Park? Make sense? Mm-hmm. The state is identifying that they are not achieving 1 year's worth of academic growth per their definition. That's what they're saying. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, we're going to go to an interactive. This will be interesting. April, did I tell you we're going to go there? Anxiety. It'll be there. Next, please. No, our map. This is the fancy stuff. I wanted to interject something fun. All right, what do we got here? Oh, I like that, a weather report. Believe it or not, that is the map of Pennsylvania with over 500, nearly 600 high schools represented by each and every dot. Okay? Color-coded based off of the PDE color-coded system. What's the best? Blue. What's the worst? Red, right? Okay. Micah, double click. We're going to zoom. Okay, we're closing in on Western Pennsylvania here. All right, stop right there for a second. All right, let's take a look at all the dots that represent local area high schools. And these are SPP scores attached to it, okay? We see the eastern suburbs right here, correct? The northern suburbs, west and south. If we hover over Monroeville, what's our score? 89.7. Take that off, Micah. Take a look around Monroeville. And I'll just have Micah just throw the cursor around some of the schools. We're going to get to them. Westmoreland County, slide over. Right there, Murraysville. Go down to Harrison City, Penn Trafford. We're working on that. I will say this. Gateway Middle School outperformed Franklin Regional Middle School. Exactly. So, and can we broaden it out a little bit? You see in the western half of our state, without a doubt, Gateway High School is doing an outstanding job. We will have this available online with middle schools. Elementary schools, I'm going to be honest with you, Micah, I'll probably drive them nuts because do you know how many elementary schools are in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? That may be just one giant dot. You might not be able to read it, but I'm going to put Micah to task on it. I believe if you've cut off the middle of the state, we are 16th out of 160-some high schools. Franklin Regional came in, I want to say third or fourth. We were like 13th, 16th, somewhere around there. Last year, we outperformed Franklin Regional as a high school. Their principal, I know very well, Mr. Ron Suvak. We had a little side bet I lost this year. But I'm up on them for the last 3 years because we outperformed them. Also, our good friend, who remembers Mr. Tony Aquilio? Name ring a bell? Longtime principal here. He's moved on to Penn Trafford High School for the last 3 years. He called. They're sitting there at 80.1. I said, Tony, just get off the phone. Call me next year. So Penn Trafford, we're outperforming. So when you're in those communities and you hear that conversation about, well, Gateway isn't what it used to be, what's the data tell us, folks? We're right there. Yes. Just to give you an idea, Micah, if you move over to, slide over, keep going left, hit right there. Mount Lebanon. We're two percentage points away from Mount Lebanon. Outperforming Bethel Park, North Hills. It's pretty impressive. April. And one thing the Pittsburgh Business Times does that is different from an SPP, the SPP is given a composite grade of everything rolled into one. They're just not taking a look at, okay, an ELA percentage. You get what I'm saying? That's what the Pittsburgh Business Times does. Whereas when you look at these schools, go to Penn Hills, Micah. Yes. You see a significant difference in points from Penn Hills to Gateway. North Versailles. I believe that's East Allegheny. Significant difference from Gateway High School. Steel Valley, 55. Big disparity in points. You see where I'm going at? That's the difference between these classes. Broaden that out, Micah. Zoom in. One more time. Okay. All those dots represent the Pittsburgh Public School District schools. We can start right up here. Perry High School. Pittsburgh Obama. Wilkinsburg. We did Penn Hills. We're about right here. Keep sliding around. Propel Braddock. Woodland Hills. My point being, in the eastern suburbs, Plum right here. What's Plum? I asked the group, how do you think we fared? Pretty impressive. And you'll see the same thing with Gateway Middle School as well. Yeah, we'll throw that up there. Yeah, hey, might go in a matter of 2 minutes for the Gateway middle school ones. Right there. We will have these online for everyone to view. I do want to thank Micah for this. I gave him, I'm an idea person, however, I can't do this. I'll say, Micah, wouldn't it look nice to have these dots reflecting scores on a map of Pennsylvania? 2 hours later, he throws me an email and says, is this what you're looking for? Thank you, Micah. Okay, we're going to move ahead. I mentioned earlier the transition to ESSA. I'll real quickly allow you to take a look at this. A lot of what you've seen with the SPP will still be within ESSA. One of the areas that they're looking at as far as high schools is adding more weight and value to either students taking advanced placement scores, the NOCTI, which is the industry-based standard test for those kids attending vocational schools. So there are certain tweaks that will come through ESSA. We'll be able to communicate those as we move forward. Next slide. Real quick, an examination of our SAT data. Next slide. We have Gateway High School, state, and national on the SAT. We've held our own over the years. The big push is trying to encourage more kids to take the SAT for college and career readiness. Next slide. Composite, just adding the three together. Next slide. The ACT, remember I mentioned earlier, very few students in our building take it, roughly 66 per year. Next slide, Micah. Next slide. AP, very strong programming within Gateway School District with the number of advanced placement courses, but more importantly, ensuring that our kids are pushed and encouraged to take the test. You see the percent of pass rate compared with the state, and they use the term global with advanced placement. Next slide. Okay, what does the data tell us? Next slide. This is just the overall. We rounded up some numbers. This is K-8 PSSA. Just giving you a look at Gateway compared to the state. We recognize, as I discussed earlier, math, even though we're slightly above the average, we know we want to improve upon that. Next slide. April. Are you ready? Okay. Here we go. This is April referred to. This is, if you want to call, a report card summary page that is downloaded through a site called eMetric. It's a closed site, but we're able to put this online, which we will do. And this kind of disaggregates all of the data. The first page is by grade. You see going vertically. These indicate percentages. If you add those together, you'll have 34% of our kids that did not pass the ELA test in grade 3. 65.3 passed in grade 3 compared with the state. So you're able to look at this data. Math. How many people have commented about the difficulty of math? And I'm one of them. My 4th grade daughter comes home. I say, call your older daughter Pitt. She's up probably studying, watching Netflix, give her a call. This isn't a gateway issue. This is a statewide issue with math. Perfectly stated. Yep, you're right. Because we may have 6th or 7th graders that haven't had the new curriculum or Envision Math resource that is currently available to 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So until we get everyone through a cycle, you see where I'm going at? Yep. Mm-hmm. And I can't say, they just really put PA Core to kind of get that stigmatism of Common Core out of the picture. You get what I'm saying? Make it PA Core. It's still Common Core. They changed a few words, but it's Common Core. We are fortunate that we have the Envision Math programming across K through 8 now. So it's the same resource, state-of-the-art, brand new 2017 edition. So our kids, as they move through, will have the same math series. Does that make sense? Science. Take a look at 8th grade science. Where's our science, folks? 8th grade? 7th, still. Give you credit. Look at this. Fantastic. Go ahead. I have it right here. Oh, I didn't put this together. I'll have this slide up on the website. I can see if eMetric, and I think they could do that. This was just a composite from every child within a district in ELA. How many slides do I have? All grades. Buildings? Yes. On the website, I can throw it up. It's not there yet, but I will have it almost on the front page where somebody can just click on it. Okay? This is just good data to look at, and it's what we do really weekly. Look at all students, historically underperforming, special education, ELL, economically disadvantaged. These are district numbers. Yes. You want to go to it? You don't need to take a picture. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there tomorrow. Take the picture. Take the picture. Whoop. Do you want me to go back? Right there. Yes. Correct. 7%. You got it. Here's one of those ones. I'm going to go back a slide. Here's one thing that I noticed. Take a look at this. Male, female. %, of our female students were advanced or proficient, meaning passing the test, in ELA, compared with 57%. Mr. Ritter just announced that he is switching. That one just surprised me whenever I looked at it. Do you see that at the younger levels? I mean, no? Yeah. Yeah. That one just, we're having discussions about that one. All right, now I'm going to jump to math, because the first thing I wanted to look at was, okay, are our females outperforming our males in math? Relatively even, right? What do you think in science? Male? Definitely one of the things that we've identified through our achievement gap right here. Science. Females. The pressure is on, April. We will get into E-metric. Can you do me a favor? Can you just throw me the email tonight, okay? Because I do have a morning meeting at 9. She's sending it right now to me. I know she is. Which is good, because it'll remind me. Yes, so we'll be able to, I'll dig through E-metric. Question? Yes. I'm sorry, we only test science in grades 4 and grade 8. Yeah, good question. Okay, remember how I talked about earlier, and this is taken right from the state. Pennsylvania's standard line system. Great school systems have 6 features in common. Clear standards. Fair and accurate way to assess. Curriculum frameworks. Instruction, materials, and proven interventions. A number of the data tools that we use with our educators, right here, and I've mentioned almost all of them. This is where we pull the data to help drive instruction. Think about when you go into the nurse's office, like myself, Monday, feeling awful. Couldn't breathe, throat swallowing glass, but still you go through the routine right after you pay your copay, whatever it is, $20. They throw you on the scale. Now, of course, the first thing I'm, telling the nurse, let me get rid of the phone, the keys. I don't need the extra weight that they're going to weigh me on. But you get on the scale. What's the next thing they do? Pulse, blood pressure, right? They run through the battery of tests. Doctor comes in. How are you feeling? Maybe take a chest x-ray, swab the throat for strep. Then the doctor does what? He prescribes either medicine, an intervention, something, correct? That's no different than what we're doing with kids now. When they come into school, we're providing them with a diagnostic intervention, or I should say assessment. We're taking a pulse on where that child is. So as we instruct the child, if the child is a grade level or 2 behind, we have to catch up that child. We provide the remediations. That could be in any form of direct instruction, available resources, Study Island, MAP, NWEA. So we're taking a pulse on each and every child. That's when that differentiated instruction comes into play. What do we do 18 weeks later? We're reassessing our child. Has the child been able to remediate those skills? That process continues to eventually catch that individual child up with his or her peers. Make sense? That's the SAS framework. This is taken directly from the state. These are what they call the cells associated with the SAS. First and foremost, you got to have what? Student achievement. Standards. It's basically the standards for learning that are developed through the state, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, delivered down to the districts. You got to have assessments. That could be diagnostic, benchmark, formative, summative assessments. You must have curriculum framework aligned to PA core. You must have instruction, materials, and resources. Now, what we have done as an administrative team, we have taken this PDE aligned SAS framework, which is a guide for all public school districts, and incorporated our own gateway standards aligned system Maiko has some fancy technology once again for us. Anybody ever hear of Prezi? What's the center cell? Student achievement and growth. Taken right off of the SAS site, we've added growth because growth is the same as achievement. Maiko, next cell. Clear standards. As an instructional team, we have developed these PA core line standards with grade, subject, course. I mentioned earlier, PDE released a calendar, a 5-year timeline of implementation of PA core. Basically saying, hey, schools, this is what you need to do in order to be ready for the PA core. Fair assessments, MAP, DIBBLES, CDT, Study Island, PSSA, Keystone, common assessments per grade level, SAT, ACT. Next. Curriculum framework. Alignment is critical. You see some of the programs, and I cannot thank the school board enough. For 2 years ago, when I walked into a curriculum committee meeting and informed them that we did not have aligned curriculum for ELA, math, and social studies, and this board said, Bill, go out and buy it. The investment was nearly $800,000, $900,000. This board's committed to academic success. When you look at instruction, the Danielson Framework of Teaching, Act 82, 1, 2, and 3. Our teachers are beginning to see walkthroughs take place, examining their instructional practices to assist them and to help them, guide them through that structure of becoming more student-centered than teacher-centered. Remember, the impact should not be on the teaching. The impact should be on learning. Are the students learning? Differentiate it. Well, I'm not done, Mike. Don't hit that button. Sorry. Differentiated instruction, flipped classroom, blended learning, culturally responsive practices. Over the last 3 years, we've been in-servicing our staff on culturally responsive practices. We have an in-service coming up in February, Mr. Telly, right? Gateway Middle School will be up for culturally responsive practices. Also, a new item down below that is critical that we've seen from our analysis of the assessments. TDAs is what we call those. Students must begin to comprehend what they're reading better in order to answer and explain the questions, the prompts from the PSSAs. So there's ongoing training with that as well. Next slide. Number of materials and resources that we utilize within Gateway. Next. Safe and supportive schools. We understand that we still must be able to offer our children enough services to ensure we are meeting their needs, not only educationally, socially, and emotionally. OVEUS, SAP, EOP plans, Gateway School police officers, Mr. Pulowski standing right behind us, breakfast programs, suicide awareness, homeschool visitor social worker, DNA, Act 126 training. All of these are incorporated into our professional developments to ensure that our teachers are trained, but also our children are protected as well. Can you slide it back out? It's primarily adult sexual misconduct training. Thank you. It all came as a result of Jerry Sandusky in Penn State. Very well stated. And this is mandatory, I want to say 4 to 6 hours of training. Has to be trained, yes. So, and you see our standards aligned system, that will be on the website. Micah, if you could just go to the last slide, just thank you. My voice is running out. As you see, I had a whole, but I want to thank everyone for putting up with me for the last 2 hours and my voice. But hopefully that gives you a snapshot of the outstanding things that we are doing in the Gateway School District, and we will continue to do in our Gateway School District. I will open it up for some questions. We are currently, as an administrative team, examining, capturing some of that time for second semester, but also offering tutoring. I know a couple of the buildings started today, and that will be incorporated in every building, and busing will be offered. What'd you tell her? Yes. Very, very good point. When we offer and complete our training, our assistant superintendents, along with the principals, are going to follow up with walkthroughs, either with Dr. King, Dr. Carmen Brown, to ensure that we're seeing these practices taking place within those classrooms. Also, we want to be able to document that through lesson plans to see that it's being done in place. So yes, we will be looking for those. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Right now, I've already talked to Mr. Telly. Gateway Middle School is up, then Gateway High School. Yes. Now, the one thing that I am currently doing is there were a number of teachers through the elementary schools that, for whatever reason, didn't have subs and didn't have the training. I'd like to get together a composite list of teachers who have not been trained. No. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't have necessarily a time frame or amount of time. Some of the items coming up for our in-services, majority of our in-services have already been completed at the beginning of the school year. Plus, we have PDE requirement training, such as the 126 and some others. But we're going to form a professional development committee team that we will be asking for volunteers. Hint. So then you could be a part of that process as we begin planning for 17-18 school year as well. Okay? That is a statewide adopted. That's mandatory throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. No, there are a number of domains within that framework that every teacher must be able to satisfy through the evaluation process of the principal. So our teachers definitely need training in that Danielson framework. Certified or but it was officially developed with Act 82 of Pennsylvania, meaning the Danielson framework is part of the evaluation model for teachers in Pennsylvania. No, I mean, this has been Act 82 3 years ago. 3 years ago. So the Danielson framework 3 years ago was adopted by Pennsylvania as the teaching framework for evaluation purposes. So teachers need to be trained in that Danielson framework to understand when a principal walks into that classroom, the elements of the framework should be noted and then, of course, documented through the evaluation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's officially adopted 3 years ago. All very good questions. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Please email me any questions you may have. We have one more question. Yes. Yes, everything's just going to be able to, we'll work on this tomorrow, be able to show it. You'll click on it, you'll be able to see the slides. That way, you know, you're able to, that's a lot of data. It's a lot of data. So, you know, you're able to really drill down into individual buildings, groups of kids. So yes, hopefully you enjoyed it.